If you came here looking for answers, real answers about whether Lake Mead is just another body of water or something far darker, then stay with me. Because what we experienced out there doesn't fit neatly into logic, coincidence, or comfort. This isn't just a story about a lake, it's about what happens when history refuses to stay buried, and what might be waiting when the water pulls back. I remember the moment everything started to feel wrong. We were standing out there, far from anything that felt familiar, and there was this overwhelming sense that we shouldn't be there alone. It wasn't just quiet, it was the kind of silence that presses against your ears. One of us muttered, almost under their breath, that they didn't like how isolated we were, and then almost immediately after something shifted, a sound faint, but sharp enough to cut through everything. Run. It wasn't loud, it didn't echo the way normal sounds first. We brushed it off. You try to rationalize things when you're in a place like that wind echo, that your mind filling in gaps that aren't really there. But then came the physical reactions, lightheadedness, that strange, unsteady feeling like the ground beneath you isn't as solid as it should be, hands trembling, breathing becoming shallow without any clear reason, and suddenly, the idea of staying didn't feel brave anymore, it felt stupid. One of us suggested, we should just turn around, go back, get in the car, leave, forget the whole thing, but we didn't, not yet, because before we ever set foot out there had already been whispers, stories, the kind that don't sound serious at first, the kind people tell casually, but the more you hear them, the less casual they feel. Around Las Vegas, people talk about the lake they always have, but lately, those stories have changed. They're not just about strange feelings anymore. They're about something real, something measurable. Bodies as the water levels at Lake Mead have dropped over the years. Things long hidden have started to surface, barrels, boats, fragments of the past, and sometimes human remains. It's gotten to the point where the Lake Mead National Recreation Area is considered the deadliest recreation area in the United States. And that changes everything, because suddenly, this isn't just a place people visit, it's a place that has held on to things for decades, and now it's letting them go. The idea that the water supply itself could be cursed sounds dramatic, at least at first, until you start connecting the dots. That thought stayed with us, especially after a conversation that, at the time, felt almost too strange to take seriously. We had been sitting in the common area of our apartment complex, just talking, normal conversation, nothing unusual, and then my neighbor joined us, Miss Lynn. She's not the kind of person who talks just to hear herself speak. When she says something, you listen, and when she started talking about the lake, something in her tone shifted. Wasn't dramatic, it wasn't exaggerated, was calm, serious, certain. She described it as a place saturated with energy, not just any energy, something heavy, something unresolved. She said all the depth tied to that area hadn't just disappeared, it lingered, not in a visible way, not in a way you could easily prove, but in a way you could feel. She said people who go near the lake sometimes experience it physically, a tightness in the chest, a sudden difficulty breathing, the kind of discomfort that shows up without warning, without explanation, the hairs on your arms standing up, even when there's no wind, a presence, not something you see clearly, but something you become aware of at one point. She looked directly at us and said something that stuck. You won't understand it until you feel it yourself. Then she told us to go to see it, to stand there, to experience it, and then come back and tell her what happened after she left. We didn't speak right away because the conversation didn't feel like a story, it felt like a warning. Part of us wanted to laugh it off, it sounded unbelievable, but another part, the quieter part, was curious enough to go. We didn't expect anything, but at least That's what we told ourselves. No spirits, no encounters, no unexplained events. Just a lake. A lake with a reputation, but even then, there was a question, a simple one. What if? So we went. The first stop was near the Hoover Dam. The wind out there is constant, relentless, it doesn't stop, and the noise from passing cars creates this constant background sound, loud, chaotic, distracting. But even with all of that, there was still something noticeable, a shift. The closer we got, the more it felt like something was changing. One of us mentioned feeling something, not fear exactly, but something close to it, like a weight, like an emotion that didn't fully belong to them. The other didn't agree, said it was probably just nerves, and honestly, that made sense. Places like this, they get in your head. But then came the physical sensations again, tightness in the chest, shortness of breath, and yes, we had been walking, got climbing, moving around, but this didn't feel like normal exertion felt. Different, unsteady, like the body was reacting to something the mind hadn't caught up with yet. From there, we moved toward the shoreline, and that's when things started to feel real, because the ground we were walking on wasn't supposed to be there. It was exposed clearly, unnaturally. You could see the lines on the rock formations, the marks left behind by water that used to be there, higher, much higher. The lake has been receding, and not slowly, noticeably. What was once underwater for decades was now open, bared, revealed, and standing there. Looking out across that space, there was one thought that wouldn't go away. Everything beneath our feet had been hidden for a reason. One of us slowed down, looking at the ground more carefully, more cautiously, because there was this feeling that at any moment you might see something you weren't supposed to see, something human. And that fear, it wasn't irrational, because that's exactly how some of these discoveries have been made. In 2022, not far from where we were standing, a barrel was found. Inside it, human remains. Later reports suggested the person had been killed, executed, shot to the back of the head. That's not ancient history, that's recent. And it's not the only case. There have been others, different locations, different remains, all connected by one thing, the water going down and what it leaves behind. But it changes how you see the place. It's no longer just a lake, it's something else, a place that kept things hidden and is now slowly giving them back. We decided to test something, not because we fully believed, but because we needed to know. We brought out an EMF reader, a spirit box, tools people use when they're trying to detect something unseen. The idea was simple. If there was anything there, anything at all, these might react. At first, nothing happened. The EMF reader stayed quiet, no spikes, no movement, and honestly, that felt reassuring. It meant there was probably nothing around us, no presence, no activity. And the lake, and for a moment, that felt like enough. But then, something changed, not in the device, in the feeling. The air shifted, subtle but noticeable, like something had moved, without making a sound. The kind of change you don't see, you just feel. And that's when we realized maybe the real question wasn't whether something was there, it was whether we were ready to notice it. But then we remembered what Miss Lynn said, that if you wanted to experience anything, you had to acknowledge it, invite it. So we did, and that's when the shift happened. The EMF reader flickered just slightly at first, so small you could almost ignore it, but not quite. Then again, a little stronger this time, enough that we all noticed no one said anything right away, because saying it out loud would make it relth. And through the static of the spirit box, we heard something faint, distorted, but unmistakably voiced, like a word, hello. We froze. There's a big difference between expecting nothing and suddenly getting something. The air felt thicker, heavier, every sound mattered more, every movement felt louder, even the smallest shift in position felt like it echoed. Then another phrase came through clearer this time. Are you alone? That question didn't feel random. It didn't feel like noise. It felt directed. Like it wasn't just a response, it was awareness. One of us whispered that they heard, "Help." Another thought it said, "Away." We replayed it in our heads. Tried to make sense of it, but no matter what we heard, the feeling was the same. It didn't feel welcoming. It didn't feel neutral. It felt like something was trying to communicate, but not necessarily for our benefit. And then came the suggestion, quiet and certain, maybe whatever was trying to communicate didn't want us there. Maybe it wanted us somewhere else, and that idea felt strange, but also strangely convincing, because the moment it was said, it felt like it fit, like it explained something we hadn't fully understood yet, so we followed it, and that led us to the next location, a place tied deeply to the history of Lake Mead, a place that doesn't exist the way it once did before the lake was created. There were communities there, real ones. People lived there, worked there, built lives there, and one of those places was known as Pueblo Grande de Nevada, an ancient settlement belonging to ancestral Puebloan people, and when the lake formed, it disappeared, submerged, covered, forgotten, at least for a while. But now, with the water levels dropping, parts of it have started to come back slowly, piece by piece. Think about that for a second. An entire inhabited area, once full of life, now reappearing after decades underwater, exposed again, open, and that thought alone was enough to make everything feel different. Local stories say the spirits of those who lived there never truly left. Some believe they remained to protect what was taken, others think they linger because something about their story was never resolved. Either way, they're still there, or at least that's what people say. There have been reports, campers hearing voices carried by the wind, sudden sickness, dizziness, feelings that disappear the moment they leave, and one thing comes up again and again, the feeling of being watched. We didn't know what to believe, but we were about to find out. Walk to the site was longer than we expected at first. It didn't seem far, but the further we went, the more distance we felt from the car, from the road, from anything familiar, and with every step, the darkness grew deeper. At one point, we turned around and realized how far we'd come. The light from where we parked, barely visible, just a faint glow in the distance. We were completely alone. The ground beneath us was scattered with seashells crunching softly under each step, a constant reminder that we weren't just walking on land, we were walking on what used to be the lake. Bin that felt wrong in a way that's hard to explain, like being somewhere you weren't meant to stand, like stepping into a space that hadn't fully accepted you. Yet by the time we reached St. Thomas Ghost Town, the atmosphere had changed again. It was quiet, too quiet, not peaceful, not calm, just empty in a way that made your skin crawl. We stood there for a moment, taking it in, or trying to, because something about the place made it hard to focus, like your attention didn't want to stay still. We decided to try again. One of us called out, asking if there was anything there. The words hadn't even fully left their mouth when we heard it. Run. Clear, immediate, not imagined, not distorted, real. Everything in our bodies reacted at once. Adrenaline surged, hands started shaking, breathing became uneven, and then that same lightheaded feeling, but stronger this time, like the pressure inside your head was shifting, like something was pushing against you from the inside. We turned off the devices, trying to ground ourselves, trying to regain control, but even standing still felt unstable, like the ground wasn't as solid as it should be. After a few moments, we tried again, asked if whatever we heard earlier was still there. The response came back just as quickly, run. This time, there was no doubt, no confusion, no second guessing, but instead of leaving, we moved forward, and that's the part that still doesn't sit right, because everything in us said not to, every instinct, every warning, every signal, but we ignored it and kept going. We entered what looked like part of an old structure, maybe a basement or what used to be one. Air inside felt colder, not just in temperature, and feeling heavier, more contained. We called out again, asking if anyone was there, and then a sound, subtle but clear, like movement, not loud but deliberate. We looked at each other. No one spoke, Because we all heard it, we debated moving closer, every instinct said. No but curiosity. One again, and that's when it happened. Another voice, different, clearer. Get back. And right after that, something louder, sharper, almost like a scream. That was enough. We didn't run immediately, but we moved quickly, faster than before, and as we did, something changed. The physical symptoms started to fade. The dizziness lessened, the pressure in our ears eased, our breathing slowly returned to normal, and that's when something clicked earlier. One of us had described the sensation like cabin pressure changes, that feeling you get when you go deeper underwater, that tightening, that shift, and then that's exactly what this place used to be, submerged deep underwater for years, decades, and somehow it felt like we were experiencing that, not physically, but in a way that still affected us, like an echo of what this place used to be by the time we were heading back. There was a shared understanding. No one needed to say it out loud. We all felt it. Whatever was out there, whether you call it energy, spirits, or something else entirely, it wasn't something to ignore, because Lake Mead isn't just a lake. It's a place where history, tragedy, and something unexplainable all collide. And when the water recedes, it doesn't just reveal what was hidden physically, it reveals everything that was never meant to surface.